Y'all know me. I'm Shane Prada, but sometimes this goes out to posterity, so I'm going to say I'm Shane Prada. I'm the director here at the BJC, and I'm so happy to introduce Elaine. It's not often that we get to host a homegrown artist in our residency program, and for that reason and many more, we've been super delighted to have Elaine Zukowski as a 1 month resident at the BJC this summer. Elaine is a craftsperson and an art conservator based here in Baltimore. In 2002, she received her BFA in fiber art from the Maryland Institute College of Art. And then for 6 years, she worked as a mold maker within New Arts Foundry in Baltimore, which provided her training in the lost wax process of casting both large and small original artist-made sculptures. The past 15 years of her employment has been with small art conservation firms. With a small art conservation firm specializing in 19th century gilded objects. This has led to working on many notable projects, including preservation of historic ornament at the U.S. Capitol. This profession has afforded Elaine additional experience in mold making and casting with resins, wood carving, and traditional gilding. An intro to metalsmithing class in 2009, taken at the former Mica Jewelry program, sparked a love of working with metal and discovering the history of contemporary jewelry. Elaine has continued to explore with materials and processes, which has resulted in several jewelry lines since 2012. Her recent body of work combines mold making and casting with crocheted and hand-dyed monofilament. In her wearable pieces, she seeks to capture the sensation of ephemera, of having seen something that will last only for a short while before it is replaced or forgotten. In recent years, Elaine's work has been exhibited nationally and internationally, including at the New York City Jewelry Week in 2021, 2022, and 2023, at Milan Jewelry Week in 2022. And her work has been part of the Museum of Art and Design's Mad About Jewelry Show in 2023. She attended the Aramount School's Winter Pentaculum in 2024. Currently, her work is represented in the Baltimore Jewelry Center's retail gallery metal shops. And fast fact, Elaine and I actually took our first jewelry class together, so we go way back. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Elaine, her whole self.
Thank you so much, Shane, for the introduction. And thank you all for coming, for joining on Zoom and also in the gallery here. This is a really, really special place. And it's just been a privilege to be able to spend a month in this community and to be able to just focus on work for that amount of time. So let's get started. All right. Now we got started. Okay, so my first slide. As Shane mentioned, we started taking classes about I don't know, 14 or so years ago, when the BJC was part of the MICA continuing studies programs, and around 12 years ago in 2013. When that program was transitioning to being what we know as the Baltimore Jewelry Center, a class ran called Jewelry in Motion. There's a benefit fashion show every year at the Maryland Institute, and as part of that, the students in this particular class at the Jewelry Center, we were able to kind of design work for that. For that show. I'm sorry, is there any way to get rid of the top dark things?
You can select okay for the first one. I minimizing that.
No problem. I just wanted to make sure that's normal. Okay.
We don't see that.
Gotcha. All right. So since the class ran, I was very excited about taking it, and at the same coincidentally for me, I had started working as an art conservation firm, specializes in working on gilded objects, and just gave such a range of different materials and processes to work with that were new to me. So as I was learning about metalsmithing, I was learning to weld, I was learning to do all these different things. And so my idea was to make kind of a mantle for the model to wear that would be more concentrated on the back of the person, almost as a protective kind of armor. Um, so so yeah, so I kind of designed this piece, and the pieces needed to be large enough to be viewed from the audience. So that was an unusual challenge as well. So I welded these open weave structures in bronze, and I covered the bronze with epoxy, which I carved and sanded. And then I also made molds of traditional acanthus leaf ornaments. The acanthus leaf is such a widely used symbol in history, and its meaning changes across cultures. But I use the symbol in a protective sense, with the thought of it as a sort of a camouflage, as well as protection. So it was a very interesting process for me to create this piece, just accumulating different elements and putting them together. And it's kind of through critique, it's kind of where I learned that my working style is rather to kind of collect, kind of accumulate, kind of collect these small items and put them together, you know, by kind of weeding and editing and culling into a final piece. So, so, so this necklace is the most intricate that I've designed in a period of time when I worked with broken glass from the street. I've always just liked to find materials sometimes to use, and using unusual materials is something that I'm just drawn to. So whenever I passed by a pile of shattered glass, I was always drawn to the sparkle and thinking that I would like to collect it and what to do with it. So I ended up kind of capturing those materials in these forms of resin, similar to the resin in the very first fashion show piece. And I faceted, sanded it, and incorporated these kind of, you know, quote unquote gems into production work. So that was the kind of the first time that I started to make production jewelry. And again, you know, electroforming, that's a brooch that was electroformed. And then some other faceted pieces where I started to introduce color. Okay, so then this slide is the Radical Jewelry Makeover came to Baltimore in 2017. So this experience had a huge influence on my work in several ways. So just in brief, for those who don't know, the project entails community members donating pieces of unwanted jewelry, just so many bags and bags and boxes of just whatever is in their closets or their tables. And the volunteers sort the jewelry. So people who want to participate in the making, they have their choice of what to utilize, and you know, depending on what material it is, it can be melted down, altered, added to, and otherwise manipulated. So you know, a lot of people can, you know, melt down, you know, really large silver pieces and make something completely new and different, which is really fascinating to see. But what my interest was just the challenge of working with materials as they are and seeing them in perhaps a different way. So the one box brooch on the left is kind of just these large ceramic beads that I kind of envisioned as kind of logs or stones or something kind of set into a steel box. I know that the photo isn't that great, hard to see, but my love of just kind of creating these minimal sculptural compositions kind of came out in the two box brooches. And then the silver beads in the brooch, and then small pair of earrings at the bottom, those were taken from a Native American liquid silver necklace. And I wove those silver beads with steel wire. In kind of like a pattern loosely inspired by the process of tatting, which is a lace making process. So by passing the wire multiple times through the beads, I was able to create a structure. And by using the wire as a visual element, I made a small textile that would seem very delicate visually, but it brings a layer to the piece that complements the rhinestones, which I actually sewed into. I believe those are silver discs that I sewed rhinestones into, and then the kind of lace-like material. So just a little bit close-ups of those pieces. Okay, so then that led me to creating this work. So these are the first earrings I made with this bead weaving technique that I kind of, again, kind of pulled from my experience of working with those alternative material, or not alternative materials, but those breaking down that jewelry. So I kind of pulled from that experience. And I started to source vintage beads from different suppliers, and I found that my favorite were kind of translucent glass bugle beads because of the color, the way they catch the light, and also their size. The fact that they're longer kind of, enables you to kind of create these very faceted fractal-like structures. Also, you kind of need beads that can take multiple passes of the wire, like maybe 3 or 4 wires, or sometimes going through those very small holes. So anyway, that's how I chose the beads. And I got more interested about, the actual beads, how they were made, the glass traditions of different countries. And then just the sheer variety of ways in which you can use these tiny shapes is endlessly intriguing and part of a long continuum of craft. So as I experimented, I found that I could free weave these shapes as hollow forms, and I would incorporate thread to provide, some flexibility. These are kind of more balloon-like shapes that kind of drape a little bit more. And as I worked, I was thinking about also, I was thinking about knotting as a means of creation, the possibilities of a single line. And then in reading about sailor's knots history, I decided to render one in beadwork as kind of a ghostly knot. I think there was actually an open call for a show that dealt with souvenirs. So that was my idea to submit to that. So this one is made of vintage Italian and Japanese beads. And I made the securing it to the garment with bezel set magnets, which I don't have a photo of, but as you can see on the garment, there's maybe like 5 or 6 different magnets that hold it in place and allow it to drape in a certain way. So I began to really like magnets as a means of securing these large brooches. So this is another, just a few images, a small series of brooches that I made that was actually as a part of a show that Shane and her colleague Lydia curated that was at New York Jewelry Week. And then here's some more earrings. Again, this was very fun. I really like to wear these hoops. They have a lot of movement, and it was fun for me to eventually figure out how to incorporate metal smithing or, kind of designs in metal. And then I just included a shot. I always just like that skeleton of the piece before it comes together, and it's maybe interesting for people to see, how how you kind of make the outline to play with it. And then also another cool feature of using this technique and material was that I often was able to kind of build bead hinges in, kind of working just like regular hinges, but without all the sweat that metal smithing requires to make hinges. So yeah, that was a large pod necklace that I was designing. And then so the snow donuts, that's the name that I called these earrings. And then it's also the name I gave to this photo that I was just walking home after a snow day where my work got canceled, and yeah, just you know, saw saw this image and just really loved it. So yeah, inspiration for work. It's just so many places: literature, film, music, fashion. But photography is one kind of consistent part of my daily practice that I can just kind of refer back to those images very constantly. Um, and so I take kind of weekly walks in the park. So this is just a photo of some graffiti there, just the layers and the colors. So one thing I've been thinking about is this constant collection of images that we all have and the nature of ephemera. Both the images that we strive to capture constantly that are momentary and fleeting, like the snow donuts, and also the fact that individual images mean less to us in the constant aggregate of new and more things and experiences to collect. So moving on to the handwork. So crocheting is a practice that I've always done, and there's a really wonderful creator of adornment named Nora Falk, who she put into practice crocheting with monofilament because of its translucency, as well as its portability and ease. So I love the idea of creating with something that's designed to be invisible. And the way in which the material can be dyed gives it versatility. So I started with earrings, and these are, I sent to Heidi Lowe, and they were part of Earrings Galore, which is a traveling show that the Heidi Lowe Gallery does every year. And then I was very lucky to be invited to have a solo show at a really wonderful gallery in Richmond called Dransfield Jewelers. And I named the show Persistent Ephemera. And first inspired by traditional ornament shapes like bead and baguette shapes, I crocheted these hollow forms kind of similar to the beadwork in that way. But because this material is so much lighter than beads, they kind of resemble more balloon-like forms. And then the lightness of the work, in addition to the color, gives it a playful and joyful quality. So in one book I was reading recently by Kelly Carter Jackson called We Refuse, it's about all forms of protest and uprisings throughout the years, mostly violent, but her final chapter is on joy and talking about joy as a form of resistance to oppressive political forces. So when I think about why I make, I come back to this notion of using one's joy, creativity, and intellectual work as a form of resistance to oppression and injustice. To me, fashion and adornment are a great way to kind of transmit one's commitment to communicating a love for human ingenuity, an ability to translate ideas into form. So this is just a shot of the back of the brooch. I'm still kind of working out, I think, different ways to, I don't know. I keep going back and forth because on the one hand, you know, why do you have to incorporate metal into these forms? But to me, I think wearability is so important. And for me, like the textile pieces that I do have and love to wear, it is just extremely frustrating if you can't. Back to the also slipknot brooch. It was just, you know, to me, using traditional pin and catch when you don't have anything rigid around, it's just it becomes a struggle and it's very difficult. And then if the rest of your piece is, you know, squishable and light, it's just a, you know, I don't know. I'm not articulating well, but to me it's just, you know, a little bit of a problem solving exercise. So you can see little rivets in the back of this brooch. I think my original idea had been to kind of have these cutouts and have the brooch, you know, be movable as it's worn, but as I got to, needing to finish and come to the conclusion, it just ended up kind of being a still stayed object. And then you can kind of see the holes cut out, which I folded up, and those then become the points of attachment for the crochet, which I quite like that solution. But as I was saying, I'm still kind of, to me, I would love to find something a little bit more satisfying that kind of integrates the two materials a little bit more. I don't know, with a little bit more harmony. So yeah, that's another interesting part of our field, that we're just always searching. Um, just some studio shots. I just always think it's interesting to see those ghostly images, and then also just lay things out and kind of get a sense of materials and how things go. And then these are pieces that were made last fall. Also, again, back a little bit to the beginning, to this kind of resin, but then the resin is treated with this, I don't know, kind of interesting, it's called aqua resin, but it's really kind of an acrylic, like a very viscous acrylic that's mixed with, I'm not sure what the powder is. I think it's maybe gypsum powder. But it's able to be surfaced in this very smooth way and almost burnished, like the chair that was shown earlier that can get to a very high polish. You're kind of able to, with patience, really manipulate this material. So this is just a pair of earrings that's they're both hand carved, and then just very lightly colored with acrylic. Oops, line. And then there's a kind of collet necklace that's made with the same material. But instead of the aqua resin on top, these forms are dyed. And again, maybe I didn't explain very well with the crochet work, but just hand dyed on the stove top, controlling the temperature a lot, and just kind of dip dyeing the objects. And for me, I like to kind of dip the lighter colors first, and then kind of slowly add in the darker color in batches. So yeah, again, the same as the crocheted monofilament, kind of just dip work. And then these earrings are made out of anodized titanium, which I only just took a class with Jay within the past year, but that's another, to me, exciting material and process to explore. So that is it for the slides. All right, so stop share. Yes. You can follow. Um, Shane. I'm attempting. Here, let me try it just from the BJC. I think it might just be my phone. I don't know what it's doing. Seems to be cold. What can you do? Freeze a little bit. All right, I think it's working now. Yes. Yeah, when it's problems to gas. Oh, the necklace in the middle. kind of a little hardness on the stuff. And then this is more crochet work, which I've been working on since May, actually, so before the residency. Again, I'm not really ready to affix it to anything yet, and so that's why it's just kind of shown as a sample. So this is actually not monofilament, this is fluorocarbon, which is a little bit of a different material. It's a little bit more expensive and more sturdy. I think, again, I don't know what fishermen prefer, but I really liked working with it, and I thought I'd found dye that would take it, because I did some test pieces and they came a really beautiful blue. But that is maybe because I soaked them, because when I worked on this, I was dip dyeing and I just couldn't get any deep color. So it is what it is. I mean, obviously, as you can see, I will just work with what I have, because I don't know that there's any way I can get more color, again, besides just letting the whole thing soak, which I don't want it to be. I don't want it to be a monocolor piece. So this is the same epoxy material and the dip dyeing that I mentioned. And as you can see, this material takes dye really, really well. So no worries there. And then one experiment I started to do was this kind of, I'm always interested in kind of corrugated shapes. And so I just took bezel strip and kind of made all of these separate links and then soldered those together. And again, there's kind of a pair of earrings there. A little bit, but then, you know, the rest are just samples and just kind of me still figuring out how I'd like to maybe incorporate that kind of a that kind of a process. So
Does anyone have any questions?
I've got a question. I feel like a theme that I'm noticing in all of these sort of different types of materials or approaches to working is this idea of like creating these like tiny individual components, either like the loops of bezel wire or the like individual crochet stitches.
Yeah.
And then assembling all of those into like a component, and then assembling those components into additional things in this sort of really intensely interconnected web. I'm wondering how you think about that, like process of interconnection or networking as you're making objects.
Oh, I love that question. That's a really good one. Again, like I mentioned with the first piece, the fashion show piece, which again, to me, Lola Brooks came and visited and, you know, again, kindly gave each of us artist talks, and she was just like, oh, you're one of those people who just, you know, just accumulates things and puts them together. And it's always an interesting light bulb moment when you figure out the way that you make. It kind of, you know, makes things a little bit easier if you're not trying to struggle against your nature, I think. So I really like that question. I don't know if I have a super good answer for it right now, because I feel like I just really love the accumulation, and then always in my pieces, the interconnection is the last minute dashed off kind of half-assed part. Again, for something like the necklace in the middle, I've kind of done it before, so you know, I know how it goes, or I know how to engineer things, and like, you know, again, when I was putting the connection pieces on the back, I was really thinking about how it would drape and how it would fall, and all I've got is this one little wonky guy at the end, or at the bottom rather. But you know, in the same way, I feel like on the human form, it's actually going to look fine. But yeah, I mean, that is something that I think about all the time, and perhaps you also meant more of a conceptual interconnectedness, which is again something that I'd love to think about and explore, because I don't know that I have a ready answer for that.
Nice to be intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
Were you trying to think of it?
Oh, yeah. So like, I have a lot of associations, like nostalgic associations with the forms and the colors you're using. As like a kid from the 2000s, born in the 90s, but from like definitely associate this a lot with like the millennium, like 2000s. And it was interesting talking to you about, or hearing you talk about like ephemera and like the nature of time in your work. and in your conservation work, are there like associations with that? Like, how do you get your forms? Like, how are these, where are they coming from?
Another great question. Again, another lovely, love, people should take classes with Jay. I really love her. She's, amazing and very, intuitive guide, I would say, in terms of being in the classroom. So different class with Jay, conceptually driven jewelry, that was kind of, the final pieces, in the slideshow were from there. And yeah, I was thinking a lot about nostalgia, you know, for me, like slightly different decade, but still, yeah. And I was basically just trying to come up with a lexicon of shapes to kind of, so again, I can't really tell you, I guess, just looking a lot online, like researching and thinking as well. I mean, because coming from the background of conservation and ornament and thinking about ornaments as symbols and how those are used, basically I was trying to come up with just a lexicon, just a language of these symbols that could kind of carry this content and carry this meaning. The color is, again, not something that I've researched as much, but I think just more intuitive and gravitate towards. But I would say the color is not as carefully researched in terms of nostalgia or in terms of kind of telling that story. But yeah, the way I came up with the forms was definitely just continued research and just sketching and just kind of eliminating and sketching more and just trying to trying to come up with something that I guess just work, you know, whatever in my head is what works is what I end up going with. So
So just a process question. When you are like combining forms and colors, are you ever like selecting a color palette before you even start your forms, or is it like always form and then color?
that's a great question too. I think it's probably, I think recently it's mostly form and color, I would say. I mean, the forms also, I make some molds and you know, get some production work going, but I mean, it's just the form just takes so much work, you know, just to create by itself. There's so much sanding, so much, you know, looking back and then sanding again, and then I don't know. You know, when I'm in form, I'm all form. I'm just really, you know, focused on getting those shapes. Not that I couldn't think about color first. I think that that's another, you know, perspective and another thing I could bring in. I think it would be great to shake things up and try to do something different on purpose. But the way I work right now, it's definitely, I don't know, I guess, yeah, I'm just interested in, like I said, just kind of, you know, figuring out what the form will be first, and then getting those forms as close as possible to whatever, whatever the kind of desired result, I guess. And then color. Color is kind of, I don't know, like almost like gilding, right? Like you would not do that first. So it's another like very kind of step-by-step process thing, which I guess is maybe my natural working style. For somebody who's maybe get used to it.
Also just say your thoughtful, they bold about shapes and textures and color. So again, I think there's a lot of intuition that just kind of comes out. I really like the display. It's very clever.
I mean, that's another thing about the artist talks, having seen so many people, yeah, the displays have been on point. I mean, some people really, like Stevie's obviously was sick. So yeah, mine is not that good, but
What's
some.
Yes, it is.
Well, I just mean it's not to the level of somebody who has like, you know, custom dyed wood, you know, and a mirror and like, you know, but yeah, it also, you know, I wanted the display to reflect the work and also just my working style. Mine just, you know, let's do this and see if it works. I don't know, I just like to see if things work, so.
We do have one question in the chat. Mary Helen Pierce, recent mid-career resident here with us in July. Hi, Mary. Asked, how do you decide what the piece is going to be? A brooch, a neck piece, earrings,
Oh,
kind
I
of
don't know.
similar.
I think that's a great question, Mary. Thank you for watching and for asking. And back to that necklace in the middle, that is pretty much like the most planned I ever get, where, you know, I had a template for it. I knew where the connections were going to be. I saw them pretty much where, you know, more or less, you know, so that's, you know, considering how much planning one can do, that's not really a lot of planning, I would say, but that's for me, you know, like kind of the most planned I get. Whereas mostly, yeah, I just like have piles of shapes, and recently those similar shapes in that necklace form, I've been piling them up and saying like, oh, this would be a great brooch, or like the layers are going like this. So again, I think it's just a matter of, I don't know, just again, just collecting those shapes and then yeah, kind of, like Shane already said, kind of an intuitive process to see what they would be. Yeah, I hope that's a good enough answer.
It's perfect.
Takes all kinds.
So when I first became aware of you and your work, you were very deeply into the bead weaving, and then I saw this really exciting dyed crochet, and now you're moving into these epox forms, and I'm wondering what is next for you, and how are you planning to develop your formal language next?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I don't know. I just like, yeah, I mean, again, 'cause the epoxy I've been working with for just about 10 years too. But yeah, I think more epoxy work, and again, I would love to do more anodizing. Actually, it's such an interesting material. Again, I really love the fact that it's lightweight and that it takes color. So yeah, I would say more titanium, and yeah, just working with different, you know, what else could you dye, right? Like different materials that you could, yeah, perhaps, yeah.
Cool. I have a question about steel, because
Oh,
I think it seems like aside from non what draws steel.
Oh, everything. It's just the best because it's well, at least for now, it's relatively inexpensive. I mean, all goes with the world, but yeah, just the I don't know. Yeah, just the fact that it's lightweight, so you could kind of, you know, use a lot of it, and I just like the way it saws. You know, and yeah, it's obviously a pain to solder, but you know, you can kind of get around that here and there, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I know there's more. I think about it all the time, how much I love it, but I don't. I think also, I mean, when you are using flame to control steel, it really, you know, the heat points are so small, the whole thing doesn't heat up. So I think there's an element of control there, really, which is really, really nice. Again, a really generous and lovely friend email. He welded these supports for me a while ago for a different show that I did. So I just have those in my collection now to kind of manipulate and use. But if you ever, you know, feel like peeling back the you know, the window screen, the welds are just gorgeous, and I would love to learn how to do that someday. It's just really, to me, just seeing that molten metal there, such a, you know, such a skill, such a difficult thing to do that it surrounds us, and I don't know how much all of us appreciate welds. So lots of things.
Well, bravo.
Thank you so much.
Good job.
Thank you,
I have
everybody.
one last question. I have actually two last questions.
Okay.
Let me go. Get the thing.
First, Did you know that all of our residencies are funded entirely by donations?
I did not know that actually. Wow.
And second, do you know that we're in the home stretch of our summer fundraiser for this year?
I kind of felt it was coming. There's a little chill in the air, so yeah.
For those of us at home who are trying to make more residencies like Elaine's possible, we're trying to raise, I think, what, $7,500 more dollars
Yep,
by
we've
September
already
30th?
raised about 25,000. So
This summer is a great time to donate because during our summer fundraiser, all of our donations up to $32,500 are matched by our board of directors, which means if we raise $32,500, we get $65,000. Which means we can make twice as many residencies like this happen.
and I dropped the link in the chat. Jay always does a good job at this.
BaltimoreJewelryCenter.org/donate.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Elaine. Bravo.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.